Hi guys, welcome to Read It Again Bookstore. Today we're talking to Wai Chim. She wrote The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, so you're in Australia, and I asked you this earlier, but how's tomorrow look? How's Saturday?
Tomorrow's looking pretty good. The weather is really nice. So yeah, absolutely. The future so far, so great. Yeah.
Here.
Can't say beyond this, but today is all right.
That's awesome. Yeah, when we were setting this up, we were like, okay, you're in Australia, I'm in the US. And so what time are we going to do it? So it was like 8 p.m. on Friday, which is, what time is it there?
It's 12 p.m. on Saturday. Yes, and noon. Exactly.
Perfect. So, I mean, you had plenty of time and the store just closed. In fact, I just yelled at my staff to be quiet because they're being too chatty. Anyway, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, definitely. I'm Wai Chim. I grew up in New York, so I am an American, but I've been living in Australia for 14 years now. And I moved to Australia because it's a beautiful country and wonderful sun and beaches and lovely life and lovely people. But I did grow up in New York. My parents are from China originally. My dad is from Guangdong in the southern province in China. My mom was originally from Hong Kong. But I was born in New York, went to Stuyvesant High School, in case there are any Stuyvesant people watching. But then after I graduated from college, I moved overseas and first lived in Japan for a little while and taught English there, and then wasn't quite ready to come back to the States, and then thought, oh, but Australia is a really nice place. I did study abroad there. So I moved to Australia, and that was back in 2006, and basically never left. My husband's Australian, so that's a good reason to stay. But it has been really, really wonderful to live in Australia. And of course, Australia has been really supportive of me, and I've written a few books now in Australia. But this is the first book I've been fortunate enough to launch in America. So I'm very excited to bring my book back to my home country. So,
yeah, I would be excited too, because guys, this is a really good book.
I'm so glad you think that.
Oh, if anybody has a comment. Yeah, if anybody has a comment or a question, please feel free to post it and we can ask. Anyway, it was fun. It was good. It was fast paced. You hit a whole bunch of emotions. You got the full spectrum of emotions in this book. Can you tell us about your book?
Sure. I'm actually not very good at describing the book, but I'm going to try. The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling, which I have right here, is set in Sydney. It's set in a suburb of Sydney called Ashfield. And basically, it's about 16-year-old Anna Chu. She is growing up in a migrant family, and she's dealing with the typical teenage things. She's trying to get through school. She's flunked an English essay. Her guidance counselor is giving her a little bit of a hard time, telling her she has to kind of, buckle down and get really serious. But Anna's life at home is a bit difficult. For many reasons. Specifically, it's because her mom is her mom is bedbound in the beginning of the book. And we know right away that she's suffering from some sort of mental illness, and she can't really step up and be the mother figure that her family and her children need. So Anna, as the eldest child, and this is often typical of migrant families, the eldest child, especially if you're a daughter, can tend to take sort of more of a parental role in the family. Yeah, so Anna is left to kind of semi-raise her siblings. She has a 13-year-old sister named Lily and a 5-year-old brother named Michael. So she's making sure that they have breakfast, they're getting to school. She's making sure someone's picking Michael up from school. And then, of course, she has to get to school and do all her own things. Her dad is kind of a workaholic. He runs a restaurant, which is 90-minute drive away from where they live. So oftentimes her dad doesn't come home till super late, or he's even sleeping at the restaurant in his office because it's too big of a journey. So Anna's really left to kind of raise her family and look after it. But the book itself, that's the setting and the setup of what Anna is going through. But I think the book really explores, I guess, the idea of mental health and what that means in a family, and especially in a migrant family like Anna's, because There's quite a lot of stigma around mental health in Asian communities. This is something that's just part of the culture. It's not really talked about. Emotional ideas aren't really talked about. So Anna's kind of brought up in this situation where it's so present in the family, but nobody talks about this situation. So that's kind of what the book explores. And in the process, Anna meets a lovely boy who is a delivery boy at her father's restaurant. His name is Rory, and he's really lovely and helpful and can help her navigate through this journey as she's finding out more about herself and her family. So that's kind of the summary.
You did a great job. I don't know why you were scared to do that. You did a great job.
You always told you have to do like a kind of an elevator pitch, and mine's like so long and rambling. So
yeah, because you hit all the good points. Like, her mother is bedridden, and you write it so well. Like, what was the first bit you were talking about? Looking for signs when she's about to go into the room. And I just got drawn in, and when her mom starts feeling better, she sees rainbows. Maybe she opened the blinds or something like that. And so, and I don't I am not an immigrant, but I do really understand mental health, and I have that issue in my family. And this book totally drew me in. Do you want to do a reading?
Yeah, I do. And I'm so glad you kind of mentioned that little bit, because that's the part I want to read, is the beginning of it, of how Anna's life. So I think it is. I'm so glad you think it's a hook, because that was the plan. I'm going to read the first chapter of the book, just to give you a little bit of a taste and sort of the pacing and what Anna's life is a bit like and everything, because I think it really paints that picture. So here we go. Chapter 1 of The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling. February. The shadows of the leaves on the wall bend to the right, like gentle waves coming to shore. It could be a good day. When Ma stays in bed, our mornings are a game of fortune-telling, where I'm forever looking for signs. The search begins when I try to coax her up with a cup of herbal tea. I shuffle down the hallway, looking for a shadow that looks like a smiley face, waiting for a shock from the doorknob, or trying to miss the creaking board on the floor. These signs tell me something about what to expect behind Ma's closed door. I can't say if they work or not. There was definitely a day I missed the squeaking board and Ma ended up throwing the tea I brought her against the wall. Bad day. And then there was the time I thought the shadows outside Ma's bedroom door looked like a kitten playing with a balloon. That day, Ma went out and bought me and Lily new iPhones because she said they were on special. Good day. Today's shadows look promising. And the knob doesn't shock me. The ceramic lid of Ma's special teacup rattles in my trembling hands as I push the door open. In here, the shadows look menacing. The thin slats of sunlight threaten to break through the barrier of darkness that engulfs the room. She's still in bed. Bad sign. 1 for 1. I set the cup down on the bedside table. Ma's tiny form is lost in a swath of thick blanket, so only a matted black nest of her hair pokes out. I know she's not sleeping. My heart sinks. She's been in bed for 2 weeks now. It's not the first time, and I know it won't be the last, but I still can't smother the plumes of disappointment when she gets like this, when she stops being our mother. Out of habit, I push my glasses up against the bridge of my nose. Ma, cha, tea. I can still detect the tinge of hopefulness in my voice. She doesn't stir. A small breeze makes the blinds tremble and the beams of light shiver, but nothing else in the room moves, certainly not my mother. Ma. I put a hand on the cushioned part that I think is her shoulder and shake gently. Only then does she move, and that's only to flinch my hand away. I stay by the side of the bed, waiting for another sign, some acknowledgement that I'm here, but she doesn't turn. As I leave, I shut the door as quietly as I can. This time, I think that maybe the waves in the shadows look more like spikes on a lizard, so not the good sign I thought they were. Or maybe they're just bloody leaves. I plaster on a smile and head into the kitchen. It's eerily quiet, just the sound of the dripping tap from the sink. It's the only plus side to Ma being in her room. My little brother and sister have been on their best behavior in the mornings since Ma's been in bed. The two of them are crammed together on one side of the tiny dining room table making breakfast. Ma threw out the toaster a while back. Toast is too yeet hay, hot air. And the darkened bits cause sore throats, she says. So we are eating butter and jam on plain bread. Lily is helping to spread the jam for our 5-year-old brother. Michael flattens his slice of white bread into a gooey patty and crams it into his mouth, jam and butter smearing all over his pudgy cheeks. I grab a paper towel to wipe it off, but just spreads the sticky mess around. Now, bits of paper towel cling to his face. I shrug and reach for the tub of butter. How's Ma? Lily asks. Sleeping, I say. Lily will know this is a lie, which makes it easier for me to say. I'm a terrible liar, and I don't like to argue with my sister. While some people argue to be right, Lily argues just to prove the other person wrong. Mommy's sleeping. Shh, don't wake her up, Michael says, this way too loudly, so I shush him. As expected, Lily is not lying. Okay, so like talking to herself or not talking at all? At 13, my little sister is more matter-of-fact and sarcastic than I've ever been. She's sleeping, I say again, and jam the butter knife into the hardened brick. I gouge out a piece, not caring that it looks like somebody has hacked away a piece of flesh from the middle of the block. I do my best to spread it, then give up and just fold the bread over. I eat my buttered bread in 2 big bites. The lump of butter melts slowly on the roof of my mouth. If Mommy's sleeping again, are you taking me to school, Tite? Michael asks, a snarl of paper towel still stuck to the corner of his mouth. His bowl haircut and perfect bangs make his brown eyes look even bigger. He's so cute, sometimes it hurts my heart. Lily's going to have to take you today. Lily's outraged. I have to meet with my CT partners before our presentation. You can drop him on your way. CT stands for Communications Theater. Calling it drama is too pedestrian for the students at Montgomery High. You start at 9, Lily. If you get going soon, you won't be late, I say. Ugh. Lily's complaining is overly dramatic, but it doesn't faze me. She's up and running to her room, her sticky plate still on the table. I sigh and pick up my hardly used plate along with hers. I leave the dishes in the sink and wet another paper towel in a final attempt to clean my brother's face. He sits there and lets me scrape things off with a chewed down to the nub nails. Papa didn't come home last night, my brother frowns. I know, things must have been busy at the restaurant, I say. I've noticed this has been happening whenever Ma stays in bed, but I keep this to myself. Michael reaches up to touch my face. Look, Anna, an eyelash. You have to make a wish. I smile and comply, closing my eyes and blowing on his fingertip, wishing for Ma to be out of bed, for Papa to come home, for things to just be normal. I'll stop there. And that's kind of the half of the beginning of the first chapter. But yeah, it kind of introduces us to Anna's life and what it's like for her with her mom being bedbound and dad not being home. So yeah.
So where did you get the idea for the story?
So yeah, I definitely wrote this book with the idea of I really wanted to explore the topic of mental health and mental health specifically in Asian communities, because it is, like I said earlier, not something that's often talked about, not something that is there's just not really the language of how to discuss it, what it looks like. And that was something that was really personal to me and something that I know lots of families do deal with. I know that lots of families, especially in migrant communities, I think mental health can be really, really taxing, like just all the stress that comes with that situation and just not having that language to do it. So yeah, so that was the topic that I really, really wanted to unpack. And then in doing that, I really wanted to explore delicious food, hence the wonderful title. So there's lots of food discussions in there and what it's like, I think, to grow up in a migrant family and also to understand and navigate all of the differences that we see in being a teenager and what that's like, but specifically how that can be different when you're affected by these really big topics that sometimes this institutions don't really cater for or don't understand the very specific nuances. So yeah, so that was the driving force behind it. And I think, I think that I hopefully hit those themes pretty well. I feel like the reader response and everything has meant that people did feel that this was something that they could connect with in that way. And I'm so thrilled to know that you connected with it.
I did. So what made you decide to make like the mother or the future boyfriend like have mental health issues instead of like the main character?
Yeah, I think it's really funny. I thought it was something, for me, I think the idea of having a parental figure who's supposed to be looking out for you. And this is the thing in my book, all of the adults are really, really flawed. All of my adults are not very wonderful adults. They mean well, but they're not really kind of stepping up and doing what we typically see as adults, which isn't unusual in YA, but also in YA, you kind of see like adults just disappear because it's about the teens, which it needs to be. But here I wanted to go, the adults are trying their best. They mean well, but it's not really working. So specifically, what happens when a mother who really loves her kids, and I think through the book, you know, there are some really scenes you're like, oh, you cringe and you go, wow, that's really hard. But deep down, you kind of go, she does love her kids. So how do you wrestle with that? Where with a mother who cares but is flawed, and also with the father as well. So I think part of that was there. So that was where I think I wanted to explore that, rather than having the main character be, I guess, exploring that herself. Also, something that I'm very conscious of is this idea of own voices, and kind of making sure that the representation that you're putting out there is representative of what the author experiences. I'm not saying that authors can't write this, but this is just personally something that I'm more a champion and fan of. So something that I related to more was the idea of what happens when adults aren't really kind of stepping up and doing that, because they're debilitated by various situations that are beyond their control, and they mean well, rather than, oh, I'm a teenager or a person who is going through this journey.
I liked it because I think if you came from the perspective of having a mental illness and you're writing the story through their eyes, it becomes all about what they're thinking, and then you don't necessarily find out what's going around you. It becomes more of like an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, and I think, and there are so many beautiful books that I've read that have done this so amazingly well. I'm going to throw out the How It Feels to Float by Helena Fox, who's a fellow Australian, but her book is available in the States as well. But she does.
I'll put a link.
How It Feels to Float.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just an example. But there's so many amazing books that do that. And I think you're absolutely right. Those books, I think, explore that perspective well, but also mental health is, and in situations like Anna's where it's quite acute and it does affect, kind of cause lots of waves through families and everything, that also needs to be talked about because it affects people beyond just the individual. And I think, and how severely that can affect them. So I think that was something that is important. Also, I think it was how to kind of showcase that this is something that people are also going to deal with and understand, but also that there's a way out. And that was going back to your point of Rory, the boyfriend. He's had depression himself, but he's kind of dealt with it very differently. He had a lot of family support. He went to therapy, and he acquired a lot of the language to be able to explain the situation. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good contrast for Anna, who's never had that before. So I think kind of showing that, hey, actually, here's what the other side can look like. It doesn't have to be this dark confusion. This is where you can manage it and you can look out for it. And it's not perfect, but you can take it step by step. And it kind of gives you that, okay, there's a way out of this, and it's going to be okay and stuff. And
I kept thinking that Anna and her siblings are just going to have so many years of therapy after this, dealing with the neglect of their father and their mother. And I mean, it's not necessarily her parents' fault, but
and that's the reality for a lot of people, and that's okay. It's only the beginning. And I think that's what I really wanted to communicate, is that, because I think there are parts of the book where, and I don't want to go into spoilers, but there are parts of the book where like the characters feel relieved because like, oh, everything's come to a head. It's going to be over now. But that's not how mental health works. It's just an ongoing process. And it's okay to feel those things. Like totally, of course they're going to feel relieved because everything's been boiling and simmering and all this pressure has been building up, and it's like, release. Okay, people are finally talking about it. But what happens next? So
you also talk about microaggressions in your book. I found that section absolutely fascinating. Can you talk about that? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's good. I tried to pack so much stuff in, but I think it is important. Microaggressions, first of all, I was probably like 30 years old before I first heard that term. And then when I heard it, like I was like, oh, that answers so much. Yeah, that's what that is. But it's this idea that kind of, and I speak from it as an Asian diasporic, growing up Asian American, and there are just little moments in everyday society that really points out the otherness. It's not like overt racism, like, we won't talk about, we know, have lots of examples of
aggressiveness.
Yeah, exactly. But there's little elements where you as a person who is a person of color, essentially, or someone who's grown up with with a different experience than what is considered the mainstream norm, suddenly you could feel you're reminded of your otherness all the time. And it's not overt and it's not ill-intentioned, but does make you feel uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people of color and of varying cultures and everything kind of learn to absorb it and just be like, okay, well, I can't do anything about it, which is part of it, but also recognizing, I think, and introducing that language of microaggression. That's what's happening here. Oh, okay, it's not an overt racist call, but it's something that is slightly aggressive. And it's mostly just because of social structures more than anything. But I think recognizing them for what they are is really fantastic. And it's really simple things like Asian people will be asked, where are you from? You know, like, where I'm from America. No, where are you really from? You know, and you're like, you get it. Like, okay, yeah, that's what it is. But it's that reminder of like, generally that doesn't happen if you're a Caucasian or something. People just go, oh, I'm from Delaware. Oh, cool. They don't go, no, where are you really from? What part of Europe? Like, so stuff like that. And just reminding, and I know so many people who kind of have that, I think within minority communities, immigrant communities and stuff, you recognize it, but it's good to kind of, again, just have the language about it. Yeah, exactly.
The section in the book where you talk about it, I think you laid it out so well.
I wish I could find it now. I don't think I have it. I almost want to, I don't think I've earmarked it. I almost feel like
had it as a conversation between Anna and her boyfriend is white. And it was just, you just did it so well. And I was like, oh, that's really
I will say I've had personally, like, people have commented, but why is the white guy educating the minority? And I get it. I totally get it was a deliberate choice, but people go, why is the white guy explaining it to her, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, but sometimes we are all learning, you're not born as a person and then people choose to educate themselves and be like, oh yeah, this is something that I really want to find out about. But
Anna lives in this cocoon of her family.
She's got a lot of stuff to deal with. Yeah, she's going there educating herself.
It's okay. Yeah. She knows what it's talking about, but yeah, her family is her life, and she can't quite escape it yet. And so she's basically.
And Rory
I feel like they're real people. I feel like we're talking about her, and she's just not in the room, and I feel a little.
I know. I'm so glad. They do feel like real people. And this is always what happens to writers. So invested with these characters, they really do feel like real people. And then you kind of forget about them. And then you go, oh, right. There was this whole person.
Around. Should we be careful what we say?
She's going to come back. And be
her mom. That'd be horrible.
Oh, no. This is the therapy. This is where the characters come back to the writers and be like, excuse me, what did you do with my life? I need my therapy. You messed me up. So, yeah.
So you traveled a lot. What kind of experiences did you take some of those experiences and put them in any of your books?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. I think some of it's been really interesting, I guess. Kind of understanding what it's like to be to recognize the differences in all those different identities and labels that come here. So yeah, I did bring some of it's more like observations, I think, and it positioned me well to be able to put some of my experiences of being an Asian American traveling or living in different places and bringing it into the book. Really, I'm just gonna talk really simply. Right now, people do ask me where I'm from, because and I know where you really, but I can always answer. I can answer that I'm American, and I immediately give them the passive, oh, because you heard my accent. So therefore, and it kind of introduces new conversation beats, which I think is really interesting, which has been really good. But yeah, I think some of that, those observations of lived experiences of what it's like to be specifically an Asian American going to different places has really kind of changed how I approach writing. So yeah, so I think some of the specifically a lot of the food references and stuff are totally Australian and very Ashfield is an amazing suburb that has amazing dumplings. The restaurant is a real restaurant, not named. I changed the name so I wouldn't get sued. But if you go to Ashfield, that's where you go get dumplings. So it is an introduction to kind of what it's like to live in a suburb of Australia and stuff like that.
Researching it, you're like, well, I just have to eat on all these food.
Definitely.
I gotta order everything.
I absolutely have to try all of
while researching this book.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely had to like I went to Asheville a lot, had my dumplings, made sure that I was describing it correctly, made sure I was describing the process of eating the dumpling correctly, and that just took a lot of tries. So yeah.
You got to get it right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, but it is it's also one of those suburbs that if you were to come to Sydney, which I hope one day everyone can.
Really?
Again, we really miss you. Yeah, exactly. We'd love more visitors one day when it's safe. But it's like a local suburb. So it's really one of those places that you kind of there's a strong community feel and everyone really kind of feels like it's a part of their day to day. But it's not something that you would normally see in a tourist book or something like that, which is really cool and stuff. So yeah. Exactly.
That is cool. That is cool. Oh, I hear the birds.
Oh yes, it is clearly daytime. Well, the birds making funny noises that you were talking about.
We were talking before we went live. I listened to the audiobook, and the woman who read it did an excellent job. And she's just chatting away, and all of a sudden she's like, and then the bird went.
That's exactly what the birds sound like. Clearly.
I stopped doing what I was doing and I just laughed, and my kids are like, "What's wrong with you?"
Christina Ho did an amazing job. I was really, really honored that she's so talented. She's a voice actor, but she is so talented, and she also brought like the native. She spoke Mandarin, Cantonese perfectly, flawlessly, and she took examples. There's also bits of like a dialect in there, and I was like sending her recordings, and she was like kind of mimicking them and stuff like that. So
the way she said like ma and her and dad's name. I'm like, that sounds real. I don't know if that's real, but that sounds real.
Yeah, no, but it's really important. I think like for me, hearing Cantonese is just like this feels like home kind of thing. So it was really important. And she's so expressive. She's an amazing person. So yeah, if you do get a chance to listen to
the audiobook is really good. I highly recommend it. I got mine from Libro FM, and you guys should all support Libro FM.
Absolutely, because they're the ones that they support independent bookstores, and it's a wonderful way to do it.
So, and I don't know if it's in Australia yet, but if you sign up, you pick up your you pick out your local bookstore, and then they get a percentage of the sale instead of giving it to that other company that doesn't need any money whatsoever.
No. It's a wonderful person, and I'm so thrilled to see that. Also, bookshop.org is another way to like order books. If of course ordering directly from your local bookstore.
Yeah, Bookshop's great. The in fact, Libro was the one they sent me an ARC, an advanced copy, which is how I found your book. So it was because of Libro that I emailed you and said, "Hey, would you do this with me?"
They're great. Oh, that's wonderful. No, it's so lovely to have that support, especially because I'm stuck here. I would love to be like at the bookstore right now and like chatting, and we could chat in person, but but it's absolutely fantastic that
means that booksellers around the country got a free copy of this book to listen to.
Fantastic.
So
that's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely so. Thank you, Libro FM, very much appreciated. We'll tag them afterwards.
What are you working on now?
Right now, I'm actually taking a bit of a break. This happened before 2020, where I was like, I'm just going to take a break because I've been doing lots of I've been writing a lot since like 2012, and I just needed a little bit of a break. And then 2020 happened, and I was like, no, I'm not in a good creative space or anything. But no, 2021, I'm working on a couple little YA projects. But excitingly, Freedom Swimmer, which is actually came out before Dumpling in Australia, but Freedom Swimmer is my follow-up book. Will be coming out this year in October 2021. And that's a historical fiction. So a completely different genre to Dumpling, but it's based actually on the kind of a true story. Well, it is a true story it's based on my father's history of when he was a young boy growing up in China. He was escaping sort of lots of poverty and famine and everything that was happening in the Cultural Revolution. So he decided to swim to Hong Kong. And that's what thousands of youths did back in that time to escape from all the terrible things. So so the book is called Freedom Swimmer and is about two boys making that journey and deciding to make that journey and everything.
Oh my gosh. So, I want to read that. I got goosebumps when you said, did he actually swim to Hong Kong?
He did. He did. It was a 4-kilometer swim. There are sharks. There are patrol boats and everything like that. And I got all
emotional. Like, oh my God.
It's such an emotional story. And I think lots of people, again, don't really talk about it. It's one of those things that's very discussed. But again, for lots of, I guess, Chinese overseas, Asian diasporics, like their families will know someone who did something like that if you're from China around that time, because it was something that was very, it was something that was very common for people to do and everything, and make that migration overseas. So yeah, so it was an important sort of way for me to learn more about my family, and I'm just so thrilled that it's gonna come out in the States. Yeah, it should be due out for 2021. So yeah.
And I guess spoilers, he made it because you're here.
Yes, he did make it. I am here, so yes, he did make it. But the story isn't. Yeah, the story is based on his journey, but it's fictionalized as it is. But again, tens of thousands of people made this type of story and everything. So it kind of reflects on what that history looks like and everything. So yeah,
when it's released here, can we do this again?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be back.
Good. Gosh. So when you're not writing books, what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm work full time. I work completely not in writing and nothing to do with writing. I'm currently a business system analyst, which is basically I work on Salesforce and do database development. So I'm like, I do code and websites and all these things. Very analytical.
My husband uses Salesforce.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's it. Salesforce is a thing. Now I'm plugging Salesforce. This is great. They'll love it. But it's a really interesting thing. It took me a while as a writer to kind of realize that I needed this balance, because I tried doing the whole full-time writing thing for a while, but it, excuse me, didn't really work for me. I think I have this very analytical kind of, logical mind that really needed that problem solving ability, and just writing was not really cutting it. So it was about finding a balance. So, which has been really lovely, that I've been able to do both of those things and kind of work full time and kind of have my brain working during the week, and then on the weekends, which is when I do all my writing, just kind of, really be creative and kind of work through everything that I've been thinking through the week. So yeah, everyone's journey is very, very different, but I'm just really, I think it's important, I think for kids and stuff like that who are really into coding and stuff like that, to really realize that you don't have to pick one thing or another. You can find something that works for you. So yeah.
Speaking of finding balance, what's some advice you'd give like aspiring authors?
Definitely, I think it is about finding your own path, and it's great to kind of see what everyone else is doing, but also to really recognize this is what rings true for me. I think in Australia, writers are really, especially children's writers, are so amazingly supportive. So I think if you're an aspiring author, to talk to other authors, move to Australia. But find a community. I think local writers centers, finding a writing group, those types of things, I think those are really, really important, because it kind of gets you, it's again acquiring language. So much of it is about what are people talking about? What are agents expecting? What are publishers expecting? What do they mean when they say query letter? All of those things. It's important to find community. Also because it's not an easy thing to do. Like, you think writing 80,000 words takes a really, really long time. And it's important to have like kind of your cheerleaders and people to support you. So I think finding a supportive writing community would be my absolute #1 tip for aspiring writers who want to kind of venture into that and do that. So,
so now we're at the part of the interview where I ask the author to be a bookseller. Do you have any books you want to recommend people?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go back to, I love to promote Love Oz YA, which is basically Australian young adult authors, because they're all my friends, writing community and everything. So I already told you about How It Feels to Float by Helena Fox, and which recently won the Prime Minister Literary Awards in Australia, which is like the big, amazing, but it's absolutely wonderful and has great mental health rep, where the protagonist and main character is going through a journey, etc. But it's a beautiful, touching book, and totally recommend that. Also, I think last year what came out was None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney, which is a completely different genre. It's a YA thriller. Basically, if you watched Mindhunter, which I binged, it is teenage Mindhunter. It is set in Quantico, and it's about teenagers basically interviewing serial killers, and it messed my mind, like in a good way, as you expect with this. But Ellie is absolutely brilliant, and None Shall Sleep is the perfect example of what amazing YA thrillers should be. So totally recommend that. What else? I'm trying to make sure that they're available in the States, which is why I'm like kind of slowly going through that. I think Amelia Westlake Was Never Here by Erin Gaw. That came out, I think, a few years back, but a wonderful contemporary YA, also set in Australia, about two girls who are basically taking down the system, because the system can sometimes be crap, and the system being school and stuff like that. So how do you kind of, make sure that you're calling attention to things that aren't right and just and everything? And it's just a wonderful, funny thing. Yeah. So there you go. I've got a few. Read more Australia. It's so funny because so many American readers have been like, I've never read a book that's set in Australia before. And I'm like, well, here's I
put a link to, what was it, Love Oz YA in the comments. I found that while we were talking. And
wonderful.
Then, I went through this kick where I read nothing but Australian sci-fi authors or fantasy.
Oh, so Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, because they are amazing. And Garth Nix, of course.
I love Garth Nix. Have you read his new one?
The Left-Handed Booksellers. Yeah. It's on the list that I haven't read it yet, but I've heard such amazing things.
Okay, when you finish it, you're going to be like, I want more. So put it off a little bit, because it's really good.
Okay, I will, absolutely. I'm going to talk to Garth. Maybe we can get him to come here.
Oh my gosh!
I say this, and it's going to be like, what are you doing?
No, I've been reading him since. Okay, so I'm 40, and I've been reading him since I was little, like Surreal. Oh gosh, no.
Oh yeah, all of that, exactly.
The Monday series where they went through the days of the week. I'm always trying to get kids to read them.
I love it. I love that part of our jobs as adults now is to make all the kids read the books that we loved when we were growing up.
Oh yeah, it's that and watch movies that we loved growing up.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly.
You're not doing anything. Let's watch something.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's watch Holy Lord of the Rings. Let's watch Dirty Dancing.
All of these things. And then you watch something and you go, oh, that dated actually. Maybe we shouldn't. Anyway, there's little bits. You go, oh, they let that on TV. Oh, maybe not.
Like Breakfast Club is fun. Pretty in Pink. No.
Yeah.
That did not hold up.
Some of these things you're like, oh, this is wrong. This isn't like, oh, what was I watching recently? It was like the one with Zac Efron. Anyway, yeah. Some of them they were just like, this is creepy. This is not acceptable and kosher anymore. No. But yeah, Pretty in Pink is an example.
Yeah, no, we watch Breakfast Club. They really like that, and they always wondered why. Whenever that song comes on, I'm always like,
they're like, oh, that's it. Now.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Please come back.
Absolutely. I'd love to. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much. And I was saying, like, I'm just so touched and amazed at all the wonderful things that the booksellers are doing in this time. And I think that it's so fantastic that you guys pivoted and we're like, hey, we're going to host authors. This is how we're going to do it. And that's
you got to change. You got to stick. You got to flow with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, we do have books in stock. You don't have to buy the surprising power of a Good Dumpling. Where did you get the title from?
Oh yeah, so the title is really interesting. I actually started this book called War. It started with the title War, and my publisher was like, "You have to change the title." But my publisher actually came up with it, or she came up with the idea of she wanted a title that was food related, and we kind of basically played the game, The Blank Power of a Blank Dumpling, for like a few weeks. It was really fun, and we had some really interesting ones, like The Secret Power of the Saucy Dumpling, and that was completely no, this isn't. But eventually we kind of settled. I was really grateful that I could do this with my best friend, and I asked her, "Hey, Blank Power of a Blank Dumpling, what have you got?" And I kind of explained it. She's like, "What about Unexpected Power?" And I'm like, okay, unexpected's good, but it's a negative word, me being the writer. Going, now we have to flip it into a positive, like surprising. And that was really cool that was how that workshop. And it was like, yeah, people really liked it. So it's catchy. And it's the dumpling, having that dumpling motif.
Well, I loved your description of them eating the soup dumplings.
Absolutely.
And him just trying it and I've never been able to, huh?
Have you had soup dumplings before?
I had them years ago, but I'm celiac now, so I can't eat them.
Oh, of course. Okay. I'm sure we've got to find a way. I'm sure there's got to be a gluten-free or something way. Yeah. It's not standard, but we'll figure out a way. There's got to be a gluten-free.
I remember trying to shove the entire thing in my mouth because I'm like, how do you eat this? And then like choking.
It's just bursting. Yeah.
So.
It's an art. It's an art, absolutely. But yeah, if you read The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling, you get the instructions, so that doesn't happen. Exactly.
Oh, anyway, so we have copies in stock. You don't have to buy it from us, but please support your local independent bookstore. So if your local independent bookstore isn't us, support them. Do you have one that you like to shop at?
Being in Australia, probably not something that's really used. I would say look at bookshop.org seriously, because that's where you can also support your local independent and find them out in this time when I know it's a little bit more difficult and everyone's kind of looking more for things online and everything. And I'm buying my American books from bookshop.org, and they're shipping to Australia, which is fantastic. So, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, they use the same distributor we use. So
yes, they've got
the shipping. I've shipped things to Australia. That's expensive.
It is, but it's getting better. Like, I think this is what this new kind of environment is giving us, is that you recognize that physical borders can be, surpassed. Absolutely. So all good. But yes, please support your local independent bookstore. Thank you, Read Again Books, for having me. It's been absolutely wonderful. Kim, you are amazing.
Thank you. And please, everybody watching, please follow us and like our videos. We do weekly author interviews, and most weeks we do some kind of story time. So yeah, please follow us. Anyway, thank you, Wai Chim, for doing this. This is awesome, and you rock.
Oh, saying right back at you. Have a lovely evening, all.
Have a nice Saturday. Enjoy the future.